Hi, I'm Jimmy Blais, and this is Inside Imago, where we talk about Imago's upcoming productions and the urgent feminist themes they address. We're recording on the unceded indigenous lands of Jojoke, home of the Kanien'kehá:ka of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, Huron-Wendat, Abenaki, and Anishinaabe. Imago Theatre respects the past, present, and future of Indigenous peoples in Montreal, and it stands in solidarity with the Indigenous members of our community. Today I'm talking with playwrights Amy Lee Lavoie and Omari Newton, writing team and married couple. Their new play, Redbone Coonhound, is being co-produced by Tarragon Theatre and Imago Theatre as a part of a rolling world premiere. It'll be here in Montreal from March 21st to April 1st at Théâtre Denise Pelletier, and tickets are on sale now at imagotheatre.ca. Out for a walk, Mike and Marissa, an interracial couple, meet a dog with an unfortunate breed name, Redbone Coonhound. This small detail unleashes a cascading debate between them about race and their relationship that manifests as a series of microplays, each satirizing contemporary perspectives on modern culture. Through its hard-hitting comedic elements, Redbone Coonhound explores the intricacies of race, systemic power, and privilege in remarkable and surprising ways.
I asked Omari to pass me just a single Kleenex from the Kleenex box, and instead he gave me this unopened giant pack of. I'm just going to very quickly get the one Kleenex.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I think that's linked to what we were just talking about. Like having the actors figure it out, like having the production figure it out.
Exactly. My logic is, you want Kleenex? You got options.
Yeah. Any shape you'd like. You want to use 2, you want to use 3.
Yeah. I don't know which color pack you want.
I just want something that doesn't make noise for the podcast.
Look at him skulking back to the pack of Kleenex.
No, I got my other Kleenex. Domestic
I
stuff.
love this. It's so good, though. It's good. It's so good. It's the good stuff that makes you, like, when you write together, it makes it so easy to eat. Like, I eat it up. But I'm not just saying that because I have to. Like, this play is one of my favorite plays that I've read in the last like five years.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah. It's so witty, and it's just like it puts you in the room. It puts you in the room.
That's
so
awesome.
I wanted to, and when I read it, I heard your voices. I imagined both of you there. And so I wanted to know how accurate that is.
Oh, there's a lot of us. There's a lot of our arguments in that play.
Yeah, there are, as a segue, just really quickly, because we did a talk before the show yesterday, and it was a great group of people that came out. And one woman said, I saw the show the other night and I found it quite funny, but after listening to you, now I know why. It's so funny because we were just we riff and have all these like weird tangents, and we don't take ourselves seriously. And I
also think, honestly, we're both always exhausted.
Yeah.
And we also think everything's funny. So that combination gets very candid conversations.
Yeah, we just want to have fun. Theater's fun. We just want everyone to be comfortable and,
So just jumping off of that, I think it's super interesting that you're able to take a step back then from that point, like understanding your relationship, knowing that there's definitely some very cool, meaty banter between the two of you. How do you then step back and start to decide what works and what doesn't work? You know what I mean? Like what elements from that pop out to you and say, okay, well, that will make a good part of a play.
Well, I always talk about the play in the sense that, yes, it is, loosely based on us, and it's about an interracial couple. The premise is absolutely 100% autobiographical. But ultimately, because this play is about language, our characters and the friend group are really built to contain and express ideas. This is a language play. So I think anytime it got a little too personal or we were delving too deep into, like you say, the banter, we just had to check ourselves and go, what is this play about? How are we driving these scenes? What do we need what is optimal here? And we always had that as a sort of, bouncing board for, or barometer for, the ultimate intention of every scene, how the through line, like the Mike and Marissa moments, really sent us off in those fever dream, like as we lovingly call them, satirical pieces. So that's what provoked them. So yeah, I mean, it's always tricky. And I say loosely because they are inspired by us and they, a lot of the conversations are quite personal, but there is built-in drama. Of course, we're heightening conflict. There's things that we've never said to each other that are in the play, which was also really fun to kind of get in there and do.
But something we really wanted to say to each other. It's not that we wouldn't say it. We just hadn't gotten around to saying it yet.
Yeah.
I think it's important to talk about where the idea for the play came from. Where'd that start?
So the genesis of the play was, so we for real live in the West End of Vancouver, downtown. And we were walking on the seawall one day and this dog showed up. This well-to-do white man was walking this dog, really nice dog, and it was sniffing me up and down, paying extra attention to me. And I love dogs, but I was like, this is a lot of attention. This is a bit bizarre. And I was kind of like, get a little uncomfortable. Amy just loves dogs. So she was just loving it and jealous that the dog wasn't paying attention to her.
And the man was boasting about the qualities of this dog. Like, oh, this dog can run miles without getting tired. Yeah. It's very scent driven. Once he gets a scent, he just won't give up as this dog is sniffing Omari up and down. And then finally, Omari asked, well, what kind of dog is this? And he very proudly declares it's a Redbone Coonhound.
Like, look at me right in the eyes, like, no, and like genuinely like loves his dog, had no ill intent. Just, oh, it's a Redbone Coonhound. And I was like,
and absolutely no sense of how those words might land on the Black man standing in front of him, whose dog has been all up on him.
Yeah.
So
I was like, immediately, like, that sounds like some slavery shit. Redbone, racial slur, coon, racial slur. Bloodhounds used to chase black people. I was like, this is some Southern racist ass dog name. And I walked off and immediately we walked in the other direction. I said to Amy, did you hear that? Like, can you believe that? And Amy knows everything about dogs. So she'd heard the name before. So you weren't nearly as...
I wasn't near. No, I did know that it was a variation of, a coonhound. There's like a blue tick coonhound. There's different types of hounds, obviously. The thing that is also interesting is they're not that common, at least in BC or in Canada. They're much more prevalent in the States, and particularly in the South, right? So it is sort of in BC misplaced almost. This dog, it is like a rare sighting. So I think that's where we were looking at it and going, ooh.
But now, ironically, I know two of them that live in BC since this play came out.
Yeah, but they're so but that dog in particular came from the States. He was brought into Canada. So that was also another link to what Omari was saying about that dog breed. So, we got into a ton of conversation about this dog and the insidiousness of language and the impact of those words. And because, I think we get to a point where I want to alleviate the stress and the pain of that for Omari. So sometimes I get into a position where I try to not downplay it, but I go, here's the context. Like, these dogs were actually bred to tree raccoons. That's like their function. And I was trying to be an advocate for the dog, going, imagine these dogs, like, their DNA was spliced to be at the service of men for these evil deeds or these like ridiculous, tasks. And it's not the dog's fault.
But,
so
but I was just like, I'm not saying I blame the dog, but like the humans could also stop using that name. And I talked about the example I gave. The first time I went to visit Amy in Timmins, Ontario, I took a Greyhound bus because I don't like flying. And we drove past a town called Swastika, Ontario. And I was like, what? And then I did some research and found out that like people have brought this up before and the town was like steadfast in not changing the name.
In their logic, which is not because it's completely neglecting everything you're talking about, the impact of language now, the context of language now. They were like, no, we were named this before the negative association with the words and the Nazis and all this stuff. So they were just like, we had it first, instead of going, maybe we should rethink this.
But like, if your town was called like Murderville before murder meant murder, you should change the name. I'm like, I don't care what it used to mean. Today, swastika is a very specific thing. And if I was Jewish, I mean, not even as a Jewish, even as a black man, I don't want to hear that. Like, I don't want to ever spend the night in swastika.
Yeah.
And that's,
Totally. So what is it about that conversation and that topic that makes it difficult sometimes for certain people to understand that point of view and take action into changing those types of names?
So this is something that's come up a lot in conversations about the Confederate flag in the United States of America. And, you know, I shot a movie in South Carolina. Their state flag is a Confederate flag. Every street is named after a Confederate soldier. And I've told Amy this story before, but when I shot the movie there, we rented a frat house to shoot it in. And the frat boys, when we agreed to use our frat house, did a toast, right? I wasn't there, but my friends who were two white writers from Boston were there. And the guys took a shot glass. They said, all right, this is going to be fun. And they just went 1, 2, 3, cheers to Robert E. Lee, 3, 4, 5, the South shall rise. And they were the nicest guys ever, by the way. I worked with them on this movie in South Carolina under the state flag, which is a Confederate flag. The street names are named after Confederate soldiers. And to them, it's heritage. And they go, my grandfather and his grandfather, they fought under this flag, and the past is the past. It's just people who are so entrenched in what I think is the emotional meaning of something to them today that they can't see the other side of it for other people who don't have that same context.
Yeah. And a huge part of that is also, you know, the conversation around letting go, right? Like there's a huge fear of things being replaced. Right. And so when I read the play, that's obviously being addressed, that this fear of replacing history, replacing heritage in certain ways. No spoilers. We don't want to give anything away, but we're touching upon some of the themes that you address in the play, because we do talk about a lot of things in this play, right? We and from different angles, which is super interesting and I think makes it very relevant. So what are some of the themes I think that we can talk about without giving stuff away?
Well, the Redbone Coonhound as a symbol sort of takes on a bunch of different forms for the main characters in the play. It becomes representational for everyone. It's quite literally affecting Mike, but it's sort of like we talk about a relay race and a baton being passed. So as it works its way into the psyche of this play and into Mike, it then transfers, and the meditations become about what individual people are wrestling with that's connected to all of this, like a post George Floyd world. Mm-hmm. So for Marissa, this is where race and gender intersect, and especially in their marriage, and making sure that, her qualms are that she wants to make sure that there's a place in the marriage for both of them to be heard, mm-hmm. and for there to be less of a prioritization over one over the other, mm-hmm. Without making the other person feel invalidated, mm-hmm. right? It's like, how do we support each other and give each other the space that we need, while also feeling heard? And then as it works its way into the friend group, we have themes of identity.
Yep.
Well,
identity, I always say, I think our play, one of the main targets is people with extreme, unmovable positions, right? The play mocks extremism and just sort of stubbornness, because any issue that is worth discussing, there are gray areas. It's very rare that something like the example of I'll think about like the tearing down of statues, for example, right? There have been lots of activists, indigenous folks who are rightfully, in my opinion, tearing down statues of horrible genocidal colonizers. I totally get why someone whose family, a white person whose family has been in Vancouver for a long time, might think to themselves, well, that actually, that's my great 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 grandfather, represents my culture. Like, I understand where they're coming from. I disagree with them, but I don't think that they're like overtly evil or overtly racist, right? But I think if you're so extreme in your position that you see everyone who disagrees with you even slightly as other and as enemy, and they need to be destroyed or they need to be canceled, you just, I mean, a saying I like is that like all sides of the political spectrum lead back to the same place, right? If you look at like the extreme left and the extreme right always end up in the same place, because you take that circle far enough and it's these people suck, we have all the answers, these people know nothing. So I think that's a major theme. It's just like a call for moderate discourse.
Yeah. And also that it was important for you and for me that Mike was not this monolith, this black male perspective monolith, that we wanted a sort of catalyst and a counter to that. Because again, I feel like I'm talking about your points, but I think it's very interesting, Omari, as a black man, not fitting a particular stereotype, and his experience, with that has been very interesting and informative for the play and crafting Mike. Interestingly,
I just watched a documentary on the flight over about the tennis player Arthur Ashe. I don't know if you know Arthur Ashe, but I didn't know much about him, but Arthur Ashe was this black Wimbledon champion who died of HIV. He had a blood transfusion. This is early days. But Arthur Ashe, there was a period in his life, he was like, because he was a tennis player, he was always at these country clubs. Many of them were still segregated at the time. And he went to, I think it was USC or UCLA, but incredibly articulate, educated guy. And he was labeled as a sellout, and he was labeled as the C word, right? They would call him a coon. Whereas Muhammad Ali, who was a more stereotypically militant black person, was revered as a champion. And this radical black activist being interviewed on the show, like today, like in 2023, was saying, if you listen to the things that Arthur Ashe was saying, and you removed how articulate he was, and you removed his gentle tone of voice, he was way more radical than Ali or some of these other people. But there is this expectation, I find, as a black person, that there's a certain performance of blackness that you're pressured to deliver, lest you be labeled a sellout. Even though most of my heroes, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, James Baldwin, were hella articulate. It's a bizarre, it's a very weird thing that happens.
Yeah, the same thing happens in Indian country, where you use some big words, and then all of a sudden you're learned, and then you're othered. You're othered by your own folk. Super interesting. And I think again, another thing that the play does super well is it complicates things to the point where we do get a really great taste of that that moderate discourse that you're talking about. I want to jump or change gears just a little bit, because I was super fascinated as a playwright reading this. Like I had so many questions, but one of them was like, how do you do it as a team? Like the idea of writing with somebody else, that's a whole other level. But then when you talk about a married couple doing it together, like how do you break that down? Like who does what? Who types?
I typically do the typing, like the organizing, the formatting, probably just because I enjoy that stuff. And
Amy's a structure. Well, I've said this a billion times, but it can't be said enough. Amy's my favorite writer. I was a fan of her, and I'm not just saying because we're married. I was a fan of hers before we started dating. We met because she cast me in a play, right? So it's easy when you have as much respect and reverence for your writing partner. I just trust her. So and we're usually aligned in what we think.
Well, I think we're married partly because of our sense of humor and our shared taste in humor, and it's really our little weapon against the world, where we seek a lot of relief and a lot of healing, and that's a gesture that we put in the play and hope that the audience can experience through like our sort of our tactic for that. But in terms of just like brass tacks process, given the call and response of the play, the through line, which we would really kind of get in there and write in a I would take a character and we would just riff in a Google Doc. So live docs are great because then we could just write as if it's like writing not into a void.
Yeah.
The void is another person responding, which is really cool because we didn't use half of it, but there was a great momentum and like a call and response to the scene building.
I liken it to like freestyling, where like we'll usually have like a vomit pass where we're literally responding to each other. Like if there's an argument between Mike and Marissa, we're taking a character's voice and we're arguing in real time. And then, we'll vomit some stuff out and then we'll go and edit it down and be like, okay, what are the nuggets here that really advance the plot or really establish character? So it's just this process of like freestyling, editing, refining it.
I would say that for the through line to the Mike and Marissa and friend track.
Yes.
Now, in terms of the fever dreams, for example, once we knew that this was the form in which we were going to be exploring this play, our brain started satirizing sort of pop culture, seminal pop culture pieces that, were important to us. So, for example, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner was on TV. I was watching it. I turned to Omari and I go, I have this idea of how to satirize Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, which is it's a big piece, right? Because it's an interracial Sidney Poitier, like even though he hates the film apparently, but which good reason in terms of who it's actually for. But so I pitched him. I said, imagine, I won't say what it is to say what, and Omari's like, that's great. I'm like, perfect. And then I went away and I wrote it. And then we did passes. Yeah. So the fever dreams were really that way. It became someone take the reins on it because and then passes.
And then we read it together. And then, identifying stuff that, if there's a perspective that one of us feels is missing, that if there's something that as a Black person, I'm like, actually, we have to nail this point. I'll suggest it. Same thing. If I do a pass on something and she's like, from the female perspective, there's a blind spot here. And just really, it's like, it is just this process of going back and forth until we're all happy with. And usually we agree. Like, I don't think we've had many
No, I don't think so. And obviously we are doing this with the support of Stephen Drover as dramaturge, and then Micheline Chevrier and Ashley Corcoran.
Mel Haig was a dramaturg.
Mel Haig and Mika, Tarragon.
You just need, you got to smart people who you trust giving you feedback and taking the stuff that you.
And what I will say about the satirical pieces, once we had them in a place, because they're it's very vulnerable to bring satire into a room with people, because as you know, with humor and this type of humor, you have to get to the edge of the line, right? And sometimes you have to dip your toe over it to see what that line actually is. So you need to be with people who understand the process and that are going to be honest with you, and that we can all just be in that room together and go, this is the objective. We all want to strive to make this the best. And we know what this is. And we need to surrender to that. And we've just been so lucky to have people on board throughout the whole process that have been really game and really honest with us. And so that's been the difference making in terms of just trying to really make sure that it's politically biting without being insensitive.
That fine line, by using comedy, that fine line that you dance, in my opinion, when well executed, and talking about deep, hard-hitting stuff is, in my opinion, the best way to do it, right? And so, can you talk a little bit about dancing that fine line, and if there were things that you ended up cutting, and did you go too far with some stuff? Like, how did that work?
So, well, couple thoughts. First off, we have a very similar sense of humor. Like, we were both raised on Mel Brooks movies. We both love stand-up comedy.
Like Richard Pryor and
Richard Pryor, Sebastian Maniscalco, Joan Rivers. We've been watching Kunk on Earth on Netflix and dying. We've had to pause. We were laughing so hard. So we're aligned in our sense of humor, right? So that's the first thing is we go, if somebody goes, I just don't get Mel Brooks, I don't care if you don't think that we're funny because you don't get what we're doing. Right. So that's the first thing. Then there's the line. we definitely in rehearsals would go all the way up to the line and sometimes cross it, but you could collectively feel it in your gut. Everybody felt it when you crossed it and you went, ooh, that's...
Well, it would be this resounding, oh, that's the line. Like there was no emotion to it. We were just like, oh, there it is. Like, you know what I mean? Like
we've crossed it. Yeah.
Just, it was like something popping out into the universe. Like, oh, I can see it now.
Yeah.
But it takes that rigor and it takes, like I said, that honesty. What was interesting about this process is that when we got a little bit into sticky territory was actually because we were trying to, our efforts of inclusivity in certain satirical pieces were not
they
merited.
They weren't
in a way.
justified by what we were exploring in the scene. And we had to just, I can actually speak to, there was a scene where I thought it was very important that we include the complex intersectional relationship between Indigenous people and Black people, right? Because I know enough that, you know, during the Underground Railroad, there was collaboration between Black people and Indigenous people in terms of finding their way through. And I was trying to satirize these like white allies, these Quakers who got most of the credit in history. But I'm like, really? Did you know where you're going? Like, would you have been able to find it without, you know? But we realized that like, it just, there was no place for it. We didn't have enough to hold the intersection between Black people and white people, and the Indigenous character ended up feeling othered because there wasn't just space in the play to hold it. So in my bid to be intersectional, it ended up having the opposite impact. And that was hard to let go. But I again, we had to have the humility to listen to obviously we had Indigenous collaborators work on it who gave us this feedback, and we had to let it go.
But also that's like part of the discovery of fine tuning. Like, what is the play really about? Yes. What is the play trying to say? And what are the ideas it's trying to express? And, you know, I had to remind Omar, I said, like, you know, The Shipment, which is a play that we all love. Yeah. That was about, you know, Black identity. Like, I think sometimes with this work, you go, we want to cover everything. Yeah. We want to make sure that this is, you know, A, B, and C, when really what it's meant to sort of be and say is this in this format, in this particular incarnation. Mm-hmm. We can write another play that has a more specific lens on that or in something else. But we just had to really kind of surrender to the play. Yeah. And realize what it was telling us it wanted to be. And you can only get there if you have the right people in the room, and that, you know, everyone knows that this is part of it. This is the workshop process. Well, I brought this up yesterday, but I've heard comedians talk about the tragedy of trying to do stand-up in 2023 is that so much of the stand-up process is going into small basement clubs on a Tuesday night and working out bits. And if you're a comedian, like all great comedians who live on that razor's edge, you need the space to just go for it. And if you're doing material about race or gender or ethnicity, your targets have to be on point by the time your special comes out. But to find those targets, you got to practice, right? And now what's happening is you got people showing up at comedy clubs with video cameras, recording a bit in progress and trying to cancel a comedian. It's like, you fundamentally don't understand how comedy is crafted.
Yeah, that's dangerous territory. And so then going into a room, obviously with trusted folk, is super valued. Yeah. Not always the case though, right? I mean, you're working with people you know and admire, but I imagine that we probably can find ourselves in rooms where you're trying to test those waters and people call you out.
But we're pretty quick at identifying those people, and I don't pay them much mind, and I try to get them out of the room.
Well, because you realize really quick if somebody is aligned with what you're trying to do and if they're not, right? Like, I think there's a pushing of someone's own agenda into a play that is not trying to kind of take that on. And so it's a really difficult, sensitive space because you go, well, actually, this is the lane we're in with this. And this is kind of what we need the focus to stay to.
But like, here's a rule that I like. If you have to talk someone into auditioning for your play, you probably don't want that person in your play, because it's no fault of their own. People are allowed to make the choices that they want. But if already going into it, you're not down and you need to be convinced, I know that the energy that comes in the room will be trepidation, fear, and there's just no time. Like there's just no time when we're trying to do this.
No, I mean, as you know, Jimmy, intimately, like the time you have putting up a piece in three-dimensional space is so rare, and it's so important. It's like we spend so much time developing paper and pushing words around paper or digitally when we're writing for a live form, and we have so little time in the actual live form to receive the information we need. And so I think by that point, it's essential that you just find the collaborators that, are aligned. And it's okay. I mean, there are people who work with the same collaborators over and over again for a reason. I mean, that is just, there's different tastes, there's different stories that are being told, different wants and needs. So, but having said that, because of the genesis of this play and who we've been able to work with, we've just been so lucky, and we feel really fortunate that we've just had a group of artists and creatives that have been that for us throughout the whole, years of development. So
and I've imagined that they've collaborated to contribute to the other voices, right? Because you two as playwrights obviously have pretty clear placeholders as characters in the play, but then trying to round out the other voices, I'm sure that the people that you align with who maybe represent other points of view have helped that along the way.
Big time.
Yeah.
Like,
so go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to jump to something else that we touched upon very early in this, which is the idea that, a lot of what you say in the play are things that you wanted to say to each other, but never did. And so I'm only imagining that created at some point some pretty interesting conversations.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I'm trying to think now. I think we do have a pretty open communication in our relationship. Amy, her family's Italian, or comes from Italian, French, Canadian heritage, mine are Trinidadian. These are not cultures known for holding things in, But I think what's interesting is when you write a play is you get to make your characters the sharpest, most articulate people in the moment, right? So stuff that in the moment, we wish we could have said to each other, we can revisit arguments and say the super quick, razor sharp thing that we wanted to say in the play that we couldn't have said in person.
Or that there's been time for reflection.
Yeah.
So there's moments that are referenced in the play that have happened in the past, for example, that have had time between for us to sort of be different people. I mean, to have that acknowledgement now, or that lived experience between then and now, and to go, oh yeah, that's interesting. I didn't realize that was sort of how deep that sat. I didn't realize that was sort of how you took that, or, that maybe we should have spent a bit more time on that particular issue.
For example, forcing my wife to host Super Bowl parties for a number of years when the NFL has an abysmal track record of domestic abuse.
What's interesting, and I will share this with you. So that part is completely true. This NFL complex. And I don't know, I think it's really interesting because when the play is done in Vancouver and based on our director's feedback, women, during that section are really into it. When the NFL comes up as a sort of counter or a point of discussion, there is a sort of this
eyeballing their partners and snapping their finger. There's a lot of women justifiably loathe the NFL, and a lot of guys, to our discredit, don't give a shit, and it's horrific.
So in the play that reference, Omari's high school friend actually went to the play unbeknownst to us. He saw the play and then he wrote me an apology email about a particular section in the play that he recognized from our past, and we got to talk about it.
But this was like what, 8 years ago? But
Yeah.
like from 8 years ago, I don't want to spoil it, but my friends had a really distasteful conversation about a player that was super misogynistic and super just disgusting. Right. And Amy was like at Amy's home in her living room, and
I was the only female identifying person in the small space.
Yeah.
Which didn't feel great.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, right? Like, I think that's what's been really interesting with the play in terms of how it sort of needles these points of discussion and brings out these sort of subconscious sometimes layers in individuals, and also helps them confront complicated relationships, right? And we talk about this a lot, like these conversations in the play can be relationship ending potentially. Like these can be really explosive, corrosive moments. And that's okay. I think you get to a certain point in friendships when you can't bank on history anymore, or like, high school or anything to sort of sustain a friendship when there's such an evolution post high school.
Well, there's also, your connection points when you're younger are so superficial. Like I was one of the only Black guys in my high school, but we all played basketball together. So we had that for many, many years. Right. And some of my friends have said shocking things to me. Like they've said, we had the same experience growing up though. Right. Even though you were, and they had when I explained to them how often I used to get pulled over by the police or how I get followed around, they could not believe it. They did, because they'd never experienced it. And they didn't know the different reality you can exist in while living right next to someone. And then you get to a certain age where people not being able to truly see you becomes a deal breaker. Where it's like, I don't care if we all like basketball. You don't think systemic racism exists.
Yeah. And that also applies to family. I'll throw that out there.
Yeah.
That also applies to family. Right. And so, talking to a married couple who are like, that's the heart of a family. That brings us to some of the stuff that the major conflict of the play, which, to your point, Amy Lee, it brings us to the point where it's, very possible in many relationships, that's a deal breaker. For when it comes out on paper, that's high drama. Like that's the highest you can get, right? Where we're sitting there wondering what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Somebody asked us about hope in the play, and Omari and I talk about our relationship in terms of actively working. And that to me is the highest expression of love.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't rose petals on the floor, isn't these grand sweeping motions of romance. For us, this play is really representative of the actions, the doing, it on top of this, it's a lot of language, but in terms of that as an expression of how do we get through this? How do we work towards a future together? How do we coexist? That to me is, like I said, it's the greatest expression of love.
And it's about a couple who, like, the guys they're in their late 30s, right? This isn't about newlyweds. This is like people who in their late 30s, they've been together for almost a decade. It's not will they, won't they? It's how are we negotiating this? Which to me is more interesting at this phase of my life than will they, won't they?
And that, the ultimate message really is that there's always going to be a Redbone Coonhound.
Yeah.
Like this couple is never not going to experience some form of Redbone Coonhound in their marriage and in life. It's really about the decision to work through it together that, is what it culminates to.
Yeah.
And again, we talk a lot about that this play happens, the conversations are private. We wanted to platform the conversations in a private setting versus a public setting, because we feel, and it's true, that the way people talk about the issues in this play publicly is very different.
Very different.
And we did not want a sanitized, Twitter debate we wanted what we recognize to be true. And again, you write what you want to see. And for us, in terms of this play, it was a chance for us to kind of get into an interracial marriage and the conversations that we know.
When we see interracial couples on TV or in the mainstream media, it's a sanitized version of a relationship where everybody's speaking in the most like socially acceptable quotes, and they've all read all the literature and they're all super sensitive. And that's just not the case. That's not how marriages work. Like
the white wife has bell hooks on a holster on her hip, at all times,
ready to whip it out. Yeah.
It's just, that also, not that it doesn't feel real, but we want people to see themselves in the play. We want them to encourage them to work through, to have those conversations, that it's not about knowing everything, about being right, about being glossed over, because I do think there's a classism attached to this. There's an access in terms of academia. I think people feel shut out from these high conversations or these high functioning conversations around these issues. And that to me, that really bothers me. Like, I think that this needs to be accessible. These need to be accessible conversations if we're all going to have them and participate. This isn't it's not academia necessarily.
No, it's not.
No, and I think you do a really good job of not giving us a sanitized version of it, but a version that's maybe a little bit more on the same wavelength as how people think versus how they act, or I wanted to just talk a little bit about this rolling world premiere, because this is something I have not experienced yet. But it began in Vancouver at the Arts Club, now in Toronto at Tarragon, and then coming to Imago, bring it to Montreal. Where does that idea come from?
It's a model that exists in the States already. Our dear friend and dramaturg Stephen Drover was telling us about this, that they would.
It's a program that came out of the National New Play Network in the States, and they've launched over 100 plays under this model.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating about it is that essentially plays are brought to market. So a playwright will pitch their play, and theaters can bid and say, I want a piece of that. So a playwright can have, instead of one premiere production, they can have up to 12 in an 18th month cycle.
And what's brilliant about that is, we talk about this, Canada, we find, is a country that oftentimes is like all about workshops and development, and you get 1 million staged readings, but then you get one opening. And if it's not the production you wanted, if it's not, for whatever reason, if it's not the right cast, if it's not the right city, then your play dies, and you never know. You never have a chance to see it on stage again. You never have a chance to know if it would have resonated more in Halifax or in Nunavut, or in, it just opens up your city, and then it has no more life. And I think there's something really exciting about knowing you have these other openings coming. And in the same way that a film director or that a screenwriter gets to watch early cuts of their film and sit in the audience and see how things are landing and then make changes, you get to do that as a playwright.
The playwrights have to be brought to the others. There has to be budget for the playwright to be brought to the city in which the play is being done, so that they can give dramaturgical feedback, they can change the text, so they can work on it. So that is huge, because after the premiere production, typically playwrights are a bit shut out and left behind. It's then game for interpretation, and they don't have a stake in it. And so for us, Stephen Drover was instrumental in bringing this model to the table. And now we have a co-production within a rolling premiere model, because the Tarragon production and the Montreal production, Imago Theatre, is the same. So it's the same cast, the same director, it's the same production traveling. But the Vancouver production, the premiere, the world premiere, was a completely different director. Omari co-directed with Ashley Corcoran, different everything. So
it's been fascinating too. Because we obviously, we were so intimately involved in the Vancouver production, which was the first one to go up, and that information informed the script, and then we essentially handed it off to a new team, and we definitely weighed in and got to watch, but it was more of a I don't know. It was more of a advisory position than being deep inside of it. I feel like
we're getting to observe the interpretation.
For the second preview, we cut 2 pages out of one of the satirical scenes. We're still working the ending. You know, we're doing a lot of back and forth. We'd have meetings about different things. I would zoom into rehearsals. We would look at runs and things. So it is a very collaborative process still. And Michelin and Kwaku are so great in their response to that, to the rolling premiere model.
And so it's the idea that at the end of the process, at the end of Montreal, you'll have time to sit down and work it once more, or is it while we're in Montreal, while you're in Montreal with the show that will be happening?
Well, I mean, I mean, obviously, if it changes if we learn something during this run, there's changes that need to be made. I think we're both open to it, but I mean, I don't know how much I can say about what's happening with the script.
Well, no, I mean, it's being published, so there is that as a sort of, you know, a consideration, but they're also very good at, they understand that there's rolling premiere models. So it's being published, and there's a hope that the momentum builds and more theater, like, because it's only three cities in Canada we've been to, and there's a whole country that I think a piece like this would resonate with. So
I think so. I think it's an important piece too. It will resonate with a whole bunch of places. I just wanted to talk about Montreal in specific for a little bit. Omari, being from here, why is it important? Why is it important for this show to be done here?
Well, I think anyone from Montreal can appreciate a show that deals with language and the polarizing nature and complexity of language. I think Montrealers will really get that. Also, a clash of distinct cultures and how, you know, the tension between there's a lot of analogies that can be made with the language politics in Montreal. You know, there's that. I also think my sensibility, both of our sensibilities are kind of East Coast. Like Amy went to the National Theatre School and then lived in Toronto. I was in Montreal for the first 29 years of my life. And even though, you know, the play lives in Vancouver and was written in Vancouver, I'm a Black man who's been living in Vancouver since 2006. There's a way more diverse population in Montreal that informed the way I navigate the world, even though now I live on the West Coast. So I'm very curious to see how it lands on people in Montreal.
Me too. I can't wait to see it. I just want to jump back a little bit to talking about humor again. We talked about using satire. We talked about using humor. I just want to get a little bit more from you as to why it's important to use humor and satire to tackle racism, to tackle misogyny, to tackle systemic privilege.
I think all those isms that you just talked about can and are really painful and really heavy subject matters. And I think humor is an amazing vehicle for exploring really challenging material in a way that's palatable. You know, like I feel like I know there's been different opinions on this, but to me, the movie Don't Look Up is one of the most incisive displays of the horrors of climate change. Right. I thought it made its point in a way that was so funny and horrifying simultaneously that I think that'll have way more of an impact than watching a documentary about global warming, which everybody knows is happening. But when it's highlighted in ways that are so banal and so absurd, you sit there and you go, man, like, we messed up. What have we become?
Do you think that makes it easier, more difficult for people who are the butt of the joke to be able to recognize themselves in that?
I think it makes it easier.
I don't know. I mean, I'm wondering. I'm trying to figure out how people who are the butt of the joke can or will take that.
Well, my experience is often people who are fit in the mold of what's being satirized don't see themselves that way.
No.
So they don't have a recognition of that as themselves. So oftentimes they can laugh about it because they're disassociating, you know, like their image of themselves doesn't match. And I think what's important to us with Redbone Coonhound is that it was like equal opportunity skewering. Like both sides got it. and get it. Like, it's not just, we're not picking on one in particular. It's really about people who hold extreme views that that are highlighted.
I had this random Black dude who I don't know in Vancouver call me a coon after seeing the play. And I was like, you've missed the point on such a comedic level that I can't, like, are you trolling? Like, it was such a, like, I'm like, how do you not see you are exactly who we're talking about? You are who we are calling out in this play. But then I just go, you can't, millions of people voted for Trump twice, right? Some people just aren't that.
Yeah. But what you can do is hope that at some point there's a trigger for somebody that makes them go, oh, but I think that way. I've said that before.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think that's a part of the brilliance of the text. I really do think you're going to get those folks, or already have. Yeah.
Yeah. We've been lucky that people have shared that with us. Like, even yesterday, we had a couple talk to us about just not knowing the history of the language and the words within that breed title, and that they felt uncomfortable saying it after hearing us talk about the play. Like, they were just in the lobby, they were like, can we say the title? Like, they wanted to talk to us about it. And of course they came before, when they walked in, they didn't think twice about it. And they were so shook. And he said, my friend has a coonhound and I'm going to tell him. And that's what it is. That's what it takes, right? It's just like, it's like a little, like a flicker of a flame. And that's how, because first of all, I would say 80% of people don't know that it's a dog breed. No. And they don't know that, or they know one or the other, or they don't know either. I didn't know. I'd never heard that dog breed name before. It's really interesting. Either people know it's a dog breed, or they know they recognize the words as offensive within it, or they don't know either. Oh, did you tell the story about the actor? So this is hilarious. An actor who auditioned for the play, who's now a friend of ours and ended up being cast in the Vancouver production. When his agent sent him the script, he sent an email. He read the title and sent this long, angry email to the theater company saying, I don't know if you are aware of this, but the title of this play contains 2 racial slurs. They're very expensive. And he went off. And then the general manager wrote back and be like, I thank you for expressing, I think you should read the play. Yeah. Good idea. And then become our spokesperson. Yeah. You literally are judging a book by its cover right now. Man. Yeah. That's good. But is that what we were just talking about? Is that a part of the takeaway? Like, do you hope that a certain section of the audience will leave with learning something? I think being more mindful, and my only goal is that people leave with a sense of curiosity about these things. I think that's what it takes to be able to receive anything. Just being open and having conversations, about the themes of the play, and conversations that resonate with them. So, and yes, and again, stealing from that Arthur Ashe documentary, someone said of Arthur Ashe, he was one of the rare Black activists that could speak to both sides of the fence. And I was like, that is such an aspirational thing, right? That in this current era, it's like, I find that there are, whether it's media or art, there's leftist art and conservative art. And it's sad, right? Because you're preaching to the converted. And I think if we get nothing else right, I hope Redbone Coonhound is a play that in some way can speak to both sides of the aisle. Thank you both. This has been a really, really cool conversation. I look forward to seeing the play when it's here in town. Good luck with the rest of the run in Toronto. Appreciate you. We appreciate you. So good to see you again, man. Yeah, you too. Thank you for joining us for Inside Imago. And thank you to Amy Lee Lavoie and Omari Newton for spending this time with us. I've been your host, Jimmy Blais. The music you've been hearing is an original composition from Redbone Coonhound by Thomas Ryder Payne. Redbone Coonhound is at Théâtre Denise Pelletier from March 21st to April 1st. Visit imagotheatre.ca to learn more about the play and to get your tickets.
This episode was recorded at the Elan Community Digital Arts Hub in Montreal. This episode was produced and edited by Danaray Ivashik. Talk to you soon.